Next would be the mouth corners, and this is one of those controls that actually has multiple regions associated with it, and the basic regions are going to be the cheek here, which happens when you pull it up toward the cheek. So this is that region, and then these controls can also have an effect on region if you pull them straight back, and that's this region. And then if you come straight down, something like that, you start to affect this region, which is kind of just a frown bulge. So there's 3 different regions that you can kind of tune with this one control. And so I usually will set this up with some animation on it in those 3 states. Just key that there. Let's say at 5 we'll do a frown. And 10, we'll just go straight back, plus out to the side just a bit, it's a little more natural. And then more of a smile. And obviously this is not going to look great since the rest of the mouth controls aren't going with it, but the main thing is to get the corners in the right place. So fairly extreme smile there, but it's good enough to fire that region for us. So I'll key those 3 states and just kind of hit them one at a time. So if we go down to the frown first, kind of the same thing, just crank it up and find your range. Looks like that may have been pretty close already, actually. Around 17. And then just dial that in a little better. Something like that. Whoops. So those regions aren't really doing what you want them to do by default. The effect is a little off. So I'm going to paint those as well. And this is one of those cases where you're better off, in some cases, just to kill it and start over. And I typically just paint this back in pretty subtly. You just want a little kind of pooch in the base there. And again, on stuff like this, sometimes you're better off not trying to nail it with this paint map and doing it in a sculpting mode, where you can really get in there and model everything. So I'm not trying to make this perfect, you just want the bulge effect to kind of hit the right areas by default. Other side. It looks like it had a vert back there that I was still catching. Okay, well that's not necessarily pretty yet, but at least the bulging is kind of a little more where you would want it. You can actually see it from the 3/4 behind there. So that's fine for that for now. And then on this one, which is this region. It kind of just covers a broad area of the cheek, just kind of a volume thing. So you can see this one is going to be pretty far off, because even at 2 it's barely active. So this one's probably going to have to come way back in. Okay, something around 5 is good. And then just put it back around there. Paste this in. So that's fairly subtle, but it's enough to give it a little volume moving around. Maybe want to go a little bit more than that. Okay. And now you probably want to adjust the painting just a bit on that, because it's got a little too much back in the back here. So I'll pull some of that out, smooth it back in. Something like that's not too bad. Same thing over here. Okay, and then the smile, it's the big one. And this one you can see catches a lot of area, so you want to make sure and get this one painted down correctly. Around 12.5. Main thing here is just to kind of try to catch it from this kind of a 3/4 angle, and just make sure that that cheek is getting about the right amount of inflation. So something like that. And then you'll need to go in and fix that with painting. So you can see it's got a huge area. And this is also a good place to check with a 180-degree brush to make sure that any of the mouth interior that got painted in is removed. So you just kill all that for now and make sure you get all that. Put it back to 90. And I find it's easiest just to kind of start with the little rosy apple cheek thing and smoothing that back out toward where you want it. Okay, maybe a little much in here. Okay, maybe something like that. And this is probably the best one for sculpting, because you really want to hit the smile line to be exactly right, and there's a lot of stuff that gets moved around on that particular control. So again, I don't try and nail it with this. You want to try and get it roughed in as good as you can, and spend the rest of the time sculpting exactly what you want there. Okay, so we'll start with that. And so you've got some obvious things to take care of here, like this one's really bulging too much. But again, that stuff's much easier to fix with sculpting tools. Okay, so let's say that's good for the regions on the mouth. And we'll come back to the sculpting later.